and that is show some passion, some excitement, and some energy. If you don't show that, the audience will be bored. They'll think that you're not interested. Why should I be interested? So be animated. It's okay to wave your arms. It's okay to smile. It's okay to raise your voice. Just be animated. Show passion. And it's
or should I just charge in, or will you stop in the middle? We'll figure out if we have to stop. If anybody starts, we'll take care of it. Good afternoon, folks. Fun to be here. I've done this a few hundred times. Always glad to do it one more time. But one thing I thought my friends would mention that they didn't, because I bring a soldier water pistol, and every time a student says "like," I shoot them. Now, we had a guy last year that almost had to have oxygen. So if you say, like, I'm from like IPRO, like 397, and like we were working like on a bunch of really like meat product with a bunch of neat other students, I will shoot him. Just so you know. So my purpose today is to share with you some perspective that I have on making presentations. It's based on about 50 years experience as a professional chemical engineer. So this is all comes from the road. This is no theory here. Although I did have some assistants in the early days with a consultant who was an interesting lady, combination mechanical engineer and a public speaking coach. So that's what this is based upon. Why am I here? About 12 years ago, I complained to Tom Jacobius that I was tired of listening to lousy IPRO presentations by good students with good projects. Understand my frustration? I know you guys are good. I know the project's interesting and your presentations are long. Well, whenever you complain about something, you get assigned to fix it. So Tom says, so fix it. So that's where this presentation came from. It's been done many times. A lot of you could graduate from IIT never having given a presentation in public. And the first time you go to the job and the boss says, the president's coming tomorrow, stand up and tell him about your project, about what we're working on, and you go off and have a fit because you've never done that before. So I'm not going to deny you that opportunity. It's a wonderful chance to practice. Pardon me? A fit. Yeah.
Oh, a fit.
A fit.
Okay.
I'm a fit. Okay. So I have a little bit of philosophy and I got a lot of tactics here today to keep you out of trouble. My sense is that communication is the source of almost every trouble that ever existed in the world, whether it's between countries, husband and wife, parents and teenagers, boyfriend, girlfriend, you name it, communication is the root of an awful lot of the challenges that we face. If you are going to become a leader, you're going to need to inspire people. And the way you do that is to build trust, is to build a vision of better things. Part of communication is listening skills, so you have to be known as someone who can listen. And you have to be comfortable with candid feedback. One of the big frustrations I have in teaching various classes that I teach at IIT, I've taught 2 classes this semester, I typically teach 2, so I've taught a few thousand students. I have yet to have anybody ask a question in class. I've yet to have anybody say everything wasn't perfectly clear. Somebody knows who I'm looking at right now. Okay? And when you ask people to give candid feedback, they have a real tough time doing that, and so we have a hard time doing that. So, I'm going to talk about the importance of public speaking. I'm going to talk about overcoming the fear of public speaking, show you how to design a good talk, and then I'll share a few more stories with you. How many of you have a fear of standing up in front of a crowd and giving a presentation? So we got 6 honest people and what, 43 liars, Tom? Something like that. They didn't count the house. Everybody is nervous about this. We had a student last night that said, I will faint if I have to make that presentation in front of this class. The week before, when I gave the seminar, she said, no problem. Why is this important? Well, anybody here going to look for a job? You're all going to you're all independently wealthy. Don't need to get a job. Well, the rest of you who are going to look for a job, communication skills are a major differentiator. Let me tell you, I spent 30 years as a campus recruiter. I never looked at a resume, I never looked at a grade point average. I said, what did he or she communicate to me in that 30 minutes in the booth? Is there enough interest for me to invite them to come back and talk to us at our company or forget it? So communication is a major piece of that one. Management is a sucker for a well-prepared presentation. How many of you are going to be salespeople when you get into the professional career? Isn't that interesting, Myra? We have a perfect record Only one student in the front row understands that everybody is a salesman, okay? Everybody. When you go to your boss and say, we should invest $5 million in a new process that I've invented, or a new piece of equipment that I've specified, and he or she starts asking questions, guess what? That's a sales pitch. When your salespeople who call themselves salespeople say, come with me because the customer's going to ask technical questions, I need to have you help me. That is a sales function. When you prepare technical information that's written in English, not in engineering language, that people can use with customers, that is a sales pitch. So trust me, every one of you will be salespeople. The better you are, the more successful your career will be. If you don't buy that one, be prepared to be a drudge for the rest of your days. I can tell you of entrepreneurs who have lost billions of dollars because of lousy presentations. I can only tell this particular story because it refers to a university that shall be unnamed, but it is owned by the state of Illinois, and it's only a couple of miles north of here, so you might be able to figure who that is. I was working with a group of people from a number of other agencies in Chicago, helping entrepreneurs make presentations, asking for money. A particular professor was a computer science professor, and invented technology that will allow even untalented people like me to make cartoons. Why do I want to make a cartoon? Well, it turns out that a lot of technical documentation, like how do you hook up all the components of a hi-fi system, how do you remove the clutch of a Caterpillar diesel bulldozer, requires technical information. Caterpillar sells their products in 130 countries, very expensive to make manuals for mechanics in 130 countries. So this guy had a way of making cartoons to show people how to do that kind of stuff. It had a further characteristic, you could make the people look like the people in the country where your customer was. Really nice. When we looked at his first presentation, he had 20 minutes, and the first half hour of his 20 minutes he spent showing us the screenshots of where you put the data, like name, address, social security number, height, weight, mother's maiden name, exciting stuff, the name of your first pet, all the stuff you put in that kind of stuff. And the next 30 minutes of his 20-minute presentation was C++ code. Anybody here know how to write C++ code? Really exciting, right? When you see somebody else's, I mean, indents and indents and indents, and it's just fascinating. So the guy had about a 50-minute presentation for 20 minutes, and we persuaded him to knock all that off and tell the audience why there was a problem, how he could solve the problem, why they should get into this product. So, we fixed it, had a really nice presentation. He goes off to the first venture capital raising meeting that he had, made his presentation. We get a call from those guys that said, who is this bozo? What do you mean? He came in and showed us screenshots in C++ code. And then he came in and said, well, it didn't go real well. He says, yeah, we heard. Why did you show that other junk? He said, well, I thought it was important. He says, it's what I do. I'm a computer scientist. It's what I do. So we said, you know, that's not what money people want to see. They want to see how you use it. So we redo it. He went off again. This time we got a call from the next organization, but please don't send anybody else. Because this guy came and showed us computer code and screenshots. He never had time to get around to his presentation. In most of those kinds of presentations, you have 20 minutes. Anybody know how long 20 minutes is? It's 1,200 seconds. 1,200 seconds. Exactly 1,200 seconds. You don't get 25 minutes out of the 20 application. He came back again and said, I still need some more help. And we said, no, you are beyond help. So his idea sits in a drawer, unfunded, will never be funded, but he will never be able to get past sharing computer code. A big loss. So, if I ask people what they fear the worst, is it catching an infectious disease, failing final exams, handling poisonous snakes, or going down into a dark basement? It actually turns out more people are afraid of making a presentation in public than they are any of those horrible things. Physiologically, what happens? Your mouth gets dry, your brain slips into neutral, you forget where you are, who you are, what you're supposed to talk about. Your voice gets kind of squeaky, you begin to perspire, you start talking really fast, and then you spend 20 minutes on a 10-minute introduction or 20 minutes of overview comments with your title on the slide on the screen, and do not show any of the slides, at which point somebody says, thank you very much, so your time is up. So you don't want to let any of that kind of stuff happen. So I'm here to help you avoid that situation. The first secret, know your audience. Who is your audience? Do not assume that your audience, if you have a computer science project, will be computer scientists. It's an environmental project, do not assume they are environmental engineers. The best guidance I can give you is pretend it's your grandma. You're home for Thanksgiving, and grandma says, what does he do at that Illinois Institute or whatever that is? If you could explain it to her in simple English, assuming she's not a computer science or chemical engineering major, you're probably going to be okay for your job. There's nothing wrong with introducing yourself to your judges. We will actually introduce you briefly. But if you get it there ahead of time, come over and say hi, find out who we are, where are we from. Get some sense of who you're talking to. Know your material sort of goes without saying. I mean, you guys have been working on this thing the whole semester. Nobody should know more about this subject than you do. I'm a big nut on outlining. How many of you do outline before you do presentations? How many of you had to do, how many went to Catholic school where the nuns hit you in the knuckles with a ruler if you didn't do an outline? Most people have that kind of a memory, and that's why they don't like it. I wouldn't begin to put a presentation together about an outline, because I want to know first idea, second idea, third idea, premise, proof, conclusion, does it all flow and make sense? Clear problem statement. What is the problem you are solving with your project? And if you think the problem is getting through this for slugging an IPRO and getting a passing grade, that is not your problem. You have tried to figure out a way to deal with recycling plastic bottles. You are trying to revamp the Romola Theater. You are trying to take clean water to poverty-stricken villages in Mexico, something of that nature, and make sure that your problem statement is very clear up front. Grab me with that statement. Personalize it as much as you can. This is an emotional pitch. Show me a picture. Don't give me a slide that says 14,000 people went to bed without a dinner last night. Show me a picture of a kid who's obviously starving to death. You still can share the data, but grab me, show me something that causes me to say, okay, that is a serious problem. Have a premise and draw a conclusion. When you get all done, I'm going to remember your first slide. I'm going to remember your problem statement. I'm going to remember what you said you were going to do. And I'm going to look at the end and say, did you address that? And if you didn't, you're not going to get very good. Your purpose is to get the whole thing done. Finally, put this thing into the format of a story. This should not be a boring recitation of first we did this and then we did that. Here's the IPRO deliverables and then we had a meeting, blah, blah, blah. Tell us a story. Most of these teams have interesting stories. The teams that are working with the schools went to a school, they met with some kids, kids gave some suggestions, they modified the program, kids got excited, parents got excited. That's the kind of stuff that people will identify with. A few other tips. How many of you have seen people use laser pointers, the little red beam things? I've been watching these since they were invented 50 years ago. I can honestly tell you, in that 50 years, nobody, zero, have ever effectively used a laser pointer. I'm open-minded. I have no bias. If somebody proves me wrong someday, I'll say, okay, there's the first one. Worst example, well, just think about that. You guys are all thinking trigonometry, right? You're a little nervous, so your hand is going like this. By the time it gets up to that screen, that little red dot is going to look like that. If I didn't know you were nervous ahead of time, by the time I see you shaking that pointer around, I got the message. My wife and I once went to a presentation by the orthopedic surgeon for the Chicago Bears. He had a very exciting presentation. He had about 400 x-rays of people's backs. And when you see all 400 x-rays, after a while you start feeling like an orthopedic surgeon. When he did every one, he'd take that laser and he'd say, this is the spine. Well, you know, I'm kind of a quick learner, 30, 40 slides in there, I'm starting to figure out the way. I finally figured out what it was. Everybody at the end of the day had a sore neck. They went over to make a point with this guy had their neck worked out. So he was just scamming business. Horrible, just horrible. If you need to call attention to something, make it a pretty color. If you've got a complicated circuit diagram and you only want to talk about the capacitor in the middle, make it neon yellow, let it flash and say, there's a reason that thing is flashing in the middle, that's the component I'm talking about today. Don't bury me in a bunch of numbers. Use some pictures, use some graphs, use some tables, make it easy to see. Be careful of jargon. Everybody knows what API stands for, right? What do you think it is? Nobody knows? Well, pharmaceutical people say it's active pharmaceutical ingredient. Computer folks say it's application protocol interface, and chemical engineers think it's the American Control Industry. If you give a talk about the API, Tom is sitting there wondering, I wonder what the heck that is. American polyethylene, what is this? So if you've got jargon, if you have acronyms, define them up front. The phlebotomy story is a good example here. Watch out for that. A good guideline is 90 seconds per slide. If you have 20 minutes, that means you have room for about 14, maybe 15 slides. I had a student last year tell me I can talk